It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, end zone, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. 5 o'clock hour here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. Streaming on 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app. If you missed any part of the show or any of our past shows, past episodes, you can always find those on our website and on our app. And the previous hour is going to be posted here within seconds. So, but we'd encourage you to listen in real time if you can and chime in with the things that we're talking about. We always love to hear from you on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. Last hour, we spent a ton of time talking about high school football, looking at these Region 11 coaches poll for the upcoming season and looking at 3A North. As Logan High has moved to the 3A classification and predicted third in 3A North, just behind Morgan and Grantsville, but ahead of Ogden, Union, and Ben Lomond. So excited for this upcoming high school football season. There's a lot of things you can look at for a lot of these different schools that can get you excited about each of their individual seasons. So it starts on Friday, and we're going to have a lot of these games covered on local radio and video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com.
Yeah, it's going to be tons of fun. Definitely looking forward to Friday, especially for me getting to cover Logan. So looking forward to that. But a lot of great teams in Cache Valley. So should be a lot of fun. But also playing football in Cache Valley a little bit later. We got to wait until August 30th to see these guys in any capacity. But Utah State, we've had our kind of opponent preview series, piggybacking off of my written content. To get some extra radio content here. But looking at Air Force, kind of my volume 3, is that's their third opponent of the season, the Air Force Falcons. And, I think the thing that I've been saying I've brought it up a few times over the last couple weeks, is this idea that we may not know anything about the Aggies until like week 4 or week 5 or something like that. But as I was thinking about it earlier today, I wasn't as confident because one thought I had is that, well, this Air Force game is going to be a measuring stick game. Then I was like, well, the UTEP game is going to be a measuring stick game. And so, to be honest, I'm less inclined to believe what I've been saying myself for a couple weeks now. Where it's like we might not know anything about Utah State for 3 weeks. We might know who they are within a couple of weeks because if they, because they got Texas A&M sandwiched between these two games against UTEP and Air Force. But if they're 0-3, then, buckle up. It's going to be a rough season. If they're 2-1 at the end of week 3, then you're probably pretty optimistic about where this team is.
Yeah.
Because, sure, UTEP is theoretically an easy opponent, and Air Force is probably an easy opponent. But given where Utah State is at, these are the measuring stick games as to whether or not Utah State is having a bounce-back season. Because if you're a bowl-eligible team, UTEP is the kind of team that you're beating and beating comfortably. And Air Force, depending on what we see from Air Force, and we'll get into a little bit about, what Air Force is going to be. But if you look at Air Force and if they're anything similar to last year, that's the kind of team that you're beating and perhaps beating comfortably on your way to being bowl eligible. We've seen Utah State when they have these games, these seasons where they go, most of the time it was 6-7 under Blake Anderson. They were beating teams of UTEP and the 2024 version of Air Force, at least. Teams of that caliber, they were beating, and they were often beating them by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And then they lose by 2 or 3 touchdowns to teams that were, a lot better than them, or sometimes they were just losing to teams with a winning record. So these, I'm thinking more and more where you might have 2 measuring stick games, 2 pretty darn good measuring stick games within the first 3 weeks of the season and getting sandwiched between a game where you might get your teeth kicked in if you're Utah State.
Yeah, this is an Air Force team that has a obviously very different style than what you would normally see. And granted, every team's going to have its own different style to some degree, but this is so vastly different from what the Aggies will see. But this is a coaching staff that they've seen service academies. They've coached against Air Force. So if this was a new to the conference coach and seeing Air Force kind of early on, I'd be concerned. But I'm not that concerned in the fact that will Utah State be prepared? Can they? Will they know what they're up against with Air Force? Because sometimes you'll see teams that, boy, this really catches them off guard and they really have a hard time dealing with it. They'll preach something in practice, but until you see it live in person, it's such a completely different animal. Matt Wells always had some pretty good success preparing his teams for Air Force. And Blake Anderson, kind of mixed results for him. But Bronco Mendenhall, I'll be honest, I haven't seen his full track record against service academies. But this is somebody who at least is familiar with it and knows and has been through it enough times to recognize what he needs to do to prepare his team for it. That being said, this is an Air Force team that really struggled last year. And when I spoke with Coach Calhoun in Las Vegas last month, he didn't seem like he still knew who his quarterback was going to be and who was going to help lead his team on offense. Granted, it's kind of a plug and play situation for Air Force and what they do. It's not like it's going to be dramatically different from one guy to the next in what they ask their quarterback to do. But the fact that they struggled with that last year and he's still really uncertain about what that looks like this year means that, I don't know that Air Force will be at the top. It's rare for them to have multiple years down. But I think this will be a game that could be really competitive for Utah State, where in years past, if it was a new coach and based on the uncertainty for Utah State, I'd be really concerned about the Aggies in this one. I think there's still some level of concern, but this will be a really interesting measuring stick early on for Utah State.
Yeah, I know we've talked about the narrative, like, Air Force not having, multiple years in a row and of being bad or being able to bounce back pretty quickly, and that is true. We've pointed out they went 2-10 in 2013 in the Mountain West. They jumped back, go 10-3 the next year, but they did have back-to-back 5-7 seasons in the late 2010s, 2018 and 2019. They had a year where they went, they've had a span where they went 7-6, then 6-7, and then that's where that led into the 2-10 season I just mentioned. So it's not like Troy Calhoun is this master of always bouncing back immediately. Sometimes it's taken a minute. And this could very well be one of those seasons. It could just as easily maybe be a season where they jump back to being an 8 or 9 win team. But we're going to kind of have to wait and see. But with where they're at quarterback, where they have very little experience there, I think as Coach Calhoun told you, I think they have like 28 snaps or something like that
right
in the entire quarterback room, and all of that basically isolated to Josh Johnson, I think. His last name is Johnson. I suddenly can't remember.
Josh Johnson.
Josh Johnson. He's kind of the presumed starter because he's the only one that has that experience. But one thing I thought was interesting that he told you at media days was like he thought there could be similarities as far as how they start the season. Last year, Air Force did not start the season particularly well. They lost to an FCS team, I believe, in one of their first few games, or barely beat them. No, they beat Merrimack 21-6.
And they lost to every other FBS team that they faced to start the year.
They didn't win an FBS game until November. So they scored 21 points against a non-major team. And then they didn't win a game until November. That was against Fresno State. Of all teams to beat last year, Fresno State, like, what the heck was that? That was kind of a weird game for Fresno. They were also an awful offense. Like, they were a coin flip as to whether they would score double digits. They had one game where they scored 37, but that was against New Mexico, and everyone could put up 37 points against New Mexico, Aggies included. Of course, the Aggies were actually a good offense last year. But the interesting thing, though, was that their offense seemed to come alive a little bit late in the season. Sure, they had 37 against New Mexico, and it was New Mexico's defense, but they scored 36 against Fresno State. They shut out Oregon State 28-0. They scored, they win 22-19 against Nevada. They will go 31-20 against San Diego State. Now, I know those last two opponents aren't exactly the cream of the crop, but they were both on the road, and Air Force showed improvement last year. Now, a lot of those guys have left. They lost some pretty key players on offense and defense. But they were kind of a better team. Although, again, going back to the whole point is that, according to Troy Calhoun, this team could be similar in how it starts. And this team started winless against FBS teams until November. The Aggies play them in September, which might be the best time of the year to be playing the Falcons because they won't have figured out who they are either. And the Aggies have this one at home.
Yeah, and I've usually felt like if you're going to face Air Force, it's better to face them later in the season than earlier because they get dinged up with their style, and you have a little bit more time to prepare for them, at least see more of them on film for your guys. But in this scenario, Aggies get them early, which I think is probably better for this scenario. And the thing about Air Force, too, is they do such a masterful job of milking the clock that when you have the ball, you have to score because you're not sure when you're going to get the ball back. And so possessions are going to be limited for Utah State. So does this Aggie football team, does it have the ability to score whenever they have the ball? And that's a big question that we don't know. I think Utah State offensively can move the ball. I think that they've got some good running backs. I think they've got some decent wide receivers, unproven at this level, and see how they're going to do. We don't know. But if Utah State can move the ball and get points, it's really hard for Air Force to catch up. And that's always been the mantra. If you can get more points on Air Force, they can't catch up because of their style. It prohibits them from catching up quickly.
Yeah. And this is where Bryson Barnes could have maybe it's tough for me to say a quarterback having an outsized impact because the quarterback position is just built-in outsized impact for one position. But
yes,
with a guy like Bryson Barnes, where you have a guy who can scramble, one of the biggest, most valuable things of a scrambling quarterback is third down conversions. The ability to, it's 3rd and 7, and the quarterback's back there, and it's like there's nobody open, and the pass rush is closing in, then he sneaks out and he runs for 8 yards, and you got a first down. And you talk about not having as many opportunities because Air Force, for as awful as their offense was last year, they were their points total their points average was in the teens. They were still one of the best in time of possession. Like, how do you have an offense that's bad and you still have the ball forever?
Right. Yes.
But that's who Air Force is. That's their style of play. They dominate in time of possession. And so, again, to your point, when you don't have as many opportunities to score, you have to convert third downs. However you're going to do it. Whether it's the ugliest play you've ever seen, but Bryson Barnes gets 5 yards on 3rd and 4, that keeps the chains moving, and that gets you, maybe at worst, into field goal position. Get some points. The fewer empty drives you have, the way better it's going to be for the Aggies, because if you only get 5 or 6 drives the entire game, you got to capitalize on 2 or 3 of them at least. Even if your defense is having a great game, you got to be able to put up points there.
Yeah, and I guess the other concern in this game is just what's the defensive discipline going to be like for Utah State? Because you have to have such defensive discipline. You can't freestyle against Air Force, so they will kill you. They will see it and they will exploit it. And so what is that defensive discipline for USU? There's a lot of new guys and new spots. How will they be fitting in? How well will they follow the direction of the coaching staff during the game, making adjustments, kind of keeping an eye on what's happening? So that's the other concern. Like how disciplined will Utah State be defensively? There's some opponents where it's you're best suited to have some guys who can freestyle and mess with the offense with how they affect things. But with Air Force, you can't, or you get burned. So, and then one last thing too is, if I'm not mistaken, Air Force has a bye week before they face Utah State. So they get a game or two under their belts, get a chance to, or is it just one game? and then it cancel. Okay, this is like our glorified scrimmage, and then we can fine tune some things and extra practice, get ready for a conference opponent. So that's kind of interesting the way the schedule works out for Air Force.
Yeah, it is interesting because they play their FCS game. They open the season against Bucknell, have a bye week, and then they travel to face Utah State in week 3. So yeah, they're not going to be banged up at all. Utah State, they're coming off a game against Texas A&M, probably a loss, probably a tough loss, might be a little banged up, playing against an SEC team. Kind of the only scheduling advantage at that point is that the Aggies will be at home. But there are a lot of kind of scheduling aspects to this game that push to being in favor of Air Force. Coming off a bye week, coming off against a team that they should have beaten by a decent amount. And the Aggies, kind of the opposite. No bye week, really tough opponent the week before. So that could probably make this a tougher game for the Aggies. But it's early enough in the season that you're not going to be significantly banged up. I think it'll be fine for the Aggies. The biggest thing at that point is just the bye week. You'd really hope the Aggies have a bye week because you'd like an extra week to prepare for Air Force, to really be able to nail down some of the things with facing the option offense. Because you do want them to be more disciplined. You do want them to be more ready. But I think when you're talking about being disciplined, I think I don't know as much about the Nick Howell defense, but with Blake Anderson, a lot of the defensive coordinators he brought in, they thrived on living on the edge of that's also why there's a lot of penalties. But that kind of just trying to create chaos in the backfield, and that some guys would be freestyling. Ike Larson did that a lot, where he was just kind of doing his thing, and Ike Larson was able to create a lot of great plays. But again, if you do that against Air Force, it's going to cost you. But I think Bronco Mendenhall should be able to reel that in a little bit, and they should be able to do good against Air Force. I probably should have looked up what Bronco Mendenhall's record against Air Force is. That would have been an interesting thing to throw in there, because he played against them when he was at BYU. And I don't think Air Force played New Mexico last year, but Bronco's been playing Air Force forever. He knows how that worked. Played them plenty of times when he was at BYU, and so yeah, it's not going to be any surprise for him facing that option offense.
A text come in on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line from 9315. USU should do well with Air Force because they should be in great physical shape to withstand all the chop blocks. The only time I don't thank Air Force for their service is when they're in the middle of a game against USU. P.S. Utah State's better be the top gun winners in this one, Maverick. The top gun winners in this one, Maverick. Okay.
Yeah, referencing the
Maverick Stadium. Okay.
Well, and the movie.
Yeah, I get it. That's good. Okay, and then 9315 also adding, just happy Bronco knows Air Force because he has played them. Yeah, it's a coaching staff that, at least Bronco, and a good number of his guys on his staff who played for him also faced Air Force at various times in their career as players or as assistants or position coaches. So this should be a coaching staff familiar with the Air Force style.
So take this with a grain of salt, because I asked an AI what Broncos' record is. And it says 9-2. Record, and it was all at BYU. Though it does say that Air Force played New Mexico last. Oh yeah, they did. I literally said that when I was going through their schedule. They played New Mexico and lost. It's 52-37. New Mexico beat Air Force. Yeah, so that would make him. Or did he go 8-2 against Air Force at BYU? I'll have to double check that, but the AI gathered all the data for me a little quicker than I maybe could have on quick notice.
All right, so there's our preview for Utah State versus Air Force, the third game in the season for the Utah State Aggies. It'll be a home game for USU and their conference opener. And one thing interesting that Coach Calhoun said when I asked him about future opportunities of scheduling Utah State, he just kind of looked at me and he's like, we wake up in the morning and we see the Rocky Mountains, and when you wake up in the morning, you see the Rocky Mountains. It just makes sense that we ought to play each other because we're that close. Okay, there's some wisdom in that.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, this series could take I'm thinking of the Hawaii game, never mind. I was writing about the Hawaii series could be put on hold. But Air Force, I think, is a team that the Aggies should face in non-conference play.
Well, you got Hill Air Force just down the road, not too far.
And because Utah State, they've had these non-conference games against teams like, they're playing, UTEP, and they played Temple and UConn. Go from playing those teams to playing the Mountain West teams. Save yourself a ton on travel. Don't go to the East Coast to play some random team in the MAC or the American or whatever. Be playing all these teams. And you obviously can't play them all every year, but be playing Air Force, Wyoming, play these teams on the regular and non-conference games. It makes sense for everyone.
All right, quick time out here in the Full Court Press. When we come back, our latest player reveal and our top 25 Aggies for 2025 as we continue to get closer to the start of the football season. We'll discuss next here on the Full Court Press.
Girls, insist he take you to Jarek's. Picking out your wedding ring is an experience you will never forget. Come to a place where the mood is right and the setting is perfect for romance. Jarek's Fine Jewelry in Logan. The perfect collection of memorable designs, classic creation, and modern marvels. If you want an intimate, romantic experience you will never forget, then insist he takes you to Jarek's Fine Jewelry. Make it special, make it Jarek's at 930 North Main in Logan.
Jarek's Fine Jewelry. Make it special, make it Jarek's.
It's that time of the year. Fresh zucchini is everywhere. And at Old Grist Mill, they're baking it into the perfect special. The Old Grist Mill is making warm, fresh, baked zucchini bread, just like Grandma used to make. Simple ingredients and fresh zucchini to create moist, flavorful bread the old-fashioned way. It's the taste of the season. Stop by South Logan, or Smithville to grab a loaf for $2 before it's gone. And don't forget, Old Grist Mill makes all your favorite fresh bread, scones, muffins, and now serving breakfast in Logan and Smithville. Dine in, take out, curbside, or catering. Old Grist Mill is here for you.
The Aggies, the Jazz, the high schools, the Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning wants you to feel the love as they give away and install 5 new furnace and air conditioners to families in need. They need you to nominate the family, and the nominations are open through the end of this month, so only a few weeks left. Time is winding down, but Mountain Valley Heating and Air will donate the full HVAC system, the equipment, the materials, even the installation services, but they want to donate that to a deserving family who needs a little extra help and support. So nominate that family today by going to mtnvalleyhvac.com. Click on the Feel the Love tab. Again, mtnvalleyhvac.com. Before we get to our Aggie, just one more quick text here from 9315. I get tired of all the things that could injure a player with the Air Force playing them all the time, a.k.a. am I doing it right like YBU fans? I claim that when USU plays them, they target players.
Yeah, that's the narrative, because they're just a coincidence that some BYU players have been injured. But I mean, Utah State had a quarterback get injured against BYU. It's just it's a coincidence.
Yeah, but the Air Force style, you have to be mindful of how they do some of their cut blocks and things like that. But
that's usually not injuring you, though.
Yeah. But excited to see how that one plays out in week 3 for Utah State. But speaking of the Aggies, let's reveal our latest player and our top Aggies for 2025.
The Cache Valley Media Group's annual Top 25 Aggies continues today with another player reveal. The next player on the list is wide receiver Kahanu Davis. Davis is a 5'10", 180-pound slot receiver and punt returner who accounts for most of what little returning production the Aggies had left following an exodus from the wide receiver room. He caught a pair of passes in 2023 and in 2024 had 12 punt returns for 96 yards, including a 44-yard return in Utah State's win over Hawaii.
It's a coincidence that these last 2 players that we've highlighted have the same last name. They're not related, as far as I can tell.
They don't look like they're related when I look at them. So.
No.
Of course, Davis is from Hawaii, so I don't think Miles Davis is from Hawaii.
No, but Kahanu Davis, he's one of the interesting wide receivers to watch for this upcoming season. A little bit of experience, probably known more into getting some preseason recognition more for what he could potentially do in the return game. But he's a versatile player for Utah State, a versatile weapon that can be used in multiple ways for Utah State. But he was a primary punt returner last year, one of the primary punt returners. He had a big one against Hawaii. But this is somebody who I'd like to see utilized beyond just the return game. I'd like to see him utilized in the passing game as well.
And I like to see him as a slot receiver. Like, this is a guy who I think could make an impact. I mean, there are a lot of other receivers that could be making impacts. So I'm only sort of sure that Kahanu Davis is going to be in their rotation. He's certainly going to be in there getting some receptions. He's not going to be a guy that catches 0 passes. He's going to be in that rotation. We'll see how much they're able to utilize him in the pass game. They have a lot of guys with size, and then you get a guy like Davis who's got some speed and agility. He's 5'10". Technically one of the shorter guys in the wide receiver room, but those guys can make really slippery players in the slot. You can be really dangerous in there and, be a great third down, receiver, be a tough, make tough catches over the middle for first downs or for good yardage, or sometimes you slip up the seam. I mean, Brandon Bowling made a living of that, 15-yard, route up the middle, and Logan Bonner kept hitting him for those big gains. Even though Brandon Bowling wasn't the speedster, he'd get himself open out of the slot. So hoping for some good things out of Kahanu Davis as a receiver this year, and perhaps even as a punt returner, although there's several guys competing for that spot as well.
Yeah, I think that's why he got some of the recognition that he got in our lists that we put together, being listed where he is because of his versatility as somebody who can impact the game in multiple ways. But that's one of the things I'd like to see a little bit more of him from this upcoming season is what he can do as a wide receiver. I think he's got some experience that could help the Utah State, but also we've seen what he can do in the return game too. And so a big return makes a huge difference. If you're talking about field position and helping you steal some yards away from the opponent, that return game is really important. And Davis has that experience and has shown he's got some big ability to, at any moment, bring a big return back for Utah State, set them up for a much easier position on offense. And
we'll see. Punt returns are, I don't know, it feels like punt returns and kick returns are kind of going away because teams are getting too good. Well, kickoffs are, there's problems with that as far as they're almost legislating kickoffs out of the game. But punt returns, like, teams are getting too good at punts with their coverage and with all that. It's really hard to still be able to return punts these days. But Kahanu Davis, he's aggressive because, in that Hawaii game, one of the things I remember is that he caught a punt and then got leveled. Now, he didn't call fair catch because I'm returning this one catch, it absolutely gets leveled. And then it was only a couple of returns later that he takes 144 yards. And I think if he'd beaten one more guy, he'd have gone all the way, one or two guys. He'd have gone all the way. But the Aggies scored on the first play of the next drive after that 44-yard return. So I think he can make that impact, even if he's just a punt returner. But I think he's going to be more than just a punt returner for the Aggies. I think he's going to make an impact on offense. Exactly how much, we'll see. Just because, there's 5 guys on this roster who could be your leading receiver for the season.
Yeah, that's true.
And Kahanu Davis is one of those potential guys. So we'll see. The guy we think that could be the leader could be the 4th guy in receptions, or the guy that we think is 4th. Kind of where Kahanu Davis may be right now. He could end up leading the team in receptions or receiving yards. So definitely a player to keep an eye on.
Yes. So he's the latest in our players that we're highlighting this season, getting ready for the start of the football season for Utah State. Last hour we highlighted Miles Davis, and now getting a taste of Kahanu Davis as he's the latest in our player reveals for Utah State. And let's keep talking about Utah State players, but those who have moved on have left Utah State and are now trying to make rosters on NFL squads. And over the weekend, we saw a number of former Aggies. One that we know he's got a roster spot. That's Jordan Love. Bobby Wagner, he's got a roster spot. There's no question about that.
I don't think Bobby Wagner even played, did he?
I don't think he saw any time, which is not a surprise. But there are a few Aggies that one got drafted, a few added to teams as undrafted free agents who saw various levels of opportunity over the weekend. Certainly most notable was Jalen Royals. Talking about returns, he had one return for Kansas City of 26 yards. Nice return. He also was targeted 5 times in the passing game. He caught three balls, got three catches, and 14 yards. So nice all-around performance for Jalen Royals for the Chiefs.
Yeah, targeted 5 times in a pretty low yards per catch. Largely because I think they're using him in short yardage. You'd like to see him get a little more yards after the catch because I think that's what could potentially be his strength. He showed that a lot his last year at Utah State, where his first, his breakout year, he had the 15 touchdowns. He was looking like he was going to be a burner, and then the next year he was like a completely different receiver because they were using him in short yardage and then having him gain yards after the catch. And it turns out he was pretty dang good. And I think he was drafted largely based on that skill, and so like to see him do a little bit better, and that's where he could have improved a little bit. But he's targeted the most out of any receiver. He's targeted the most. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. They only had the 3 receptions, but they actually tied for the team lead. But so there's one improvement there. But the fact that he's being used in the kick return game, I think that's a good sign because it helps you kind of secure a roster spot maybe a little bit more. Although he did have the shortest return of anyone on the team. They had 4 guys return a kick, and he had the shortest one.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that he's kind of in there can just be a little more job security. Granted, when you're 4th round, he's 4th round, right? So I was thinking 3rd round. You're a 4th round draft pick. That's not the greatest, but it's a decent amount of job security. And the fact that we're kind of expecting him to be in the rotation. But again, the more you can do, the more you can help out a team, the more likely you are to stick on a roster. So, like what I saw overall out of Jalen Royals, you like to see maybe a little bit more, but it is also preseason, and you just have so few snaps to work with, and especially when you're a wide receiver. Like, the best wide receivers will get like 6 or 7 catches in a game. And it's like, what are you supposed to do when you're Jalen Royals and you play like 18 snaps? How many passes are you supposed to catch anyway? So it's hard to judge him too much based off of a few snaps, but even in those few, he's getting targeted.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest key. For getting targeted means you're getting open. So, I like that fact with Jalen Royals.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see him in a Royals uniform, in a Kansas City uniform.
It'd be weird if he was in a Royals uniform.
I mean, they are in Kansas City.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing him in that uniform and then being able to play, get on the field, he helped the team get a first down. In one of his plays that he did, 1 reception for 9 yards. It got them a first down. So, yeah, fun seeing Jalen Royals out there competing for the Chiefs. But he wasn't the only one. Kyrese Rowan got out there for Denver. We were hoping to see him get some action. He was targeted once in their game, but unable to bring that in. It seemed like that was the only time he was targeted. I don't know his total snap count, but it doesn't look like he was in the game very much.
Yeah, I'd have to go see if I can find the specific snap count. But given he was pretty far down the list on the depth chart, it meant he was only going to be getting a few snaps kind of at the end of the game, and he's also got like the 3rd or 4th string quarterback throwing to him. So, to be honest, I wasn't expecting a ton from him as far as production, just because it's really tricky. Maybe he could have pulled something out. And again, when you're a wide receiver, like that's something like 16 different players get targeted in this game. You have so many wide receivers that are getting in and out.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when you're like a 6-string wide receiver, you get 5 snaps and you better hope you catch the one pass they throw to you. Unfortunately, he didn't. So it's just really hard for him to stand out in these preseason games. So you hope he's able to put in a little more work, maybe get a little higher on the depth chart, maybe have a breakout game in another one of these the next 2 preseason games. But Kyrese Rowan, he's fighting an uphill battle. It is really hard to be in the position he is and get attention because you don't have time to get attention. And if you don't perform in the few snaps you get, it can get you stuck on the edge of a roster or out of a roster.
Right, just a limited amount of film for him. But another former Aggie who went undrafted but found his way to the LA Rams. Wyatt Bowles, offensive lineman for the Rams, and he saw 63 offensive snaps and then 5 on special teams. So Wyatt Bowles spent a lot of time on the field and one of the most snaps of any offensive lineman that were utilized for the Rams.
That's a lot of snaps for anyone in a preseason game. And I don't have the frame of reference. I don't know how many snaps linemen usually get. That's not something I've paid attention to in NFL preseason, what the trends tend to be. But I'll tell you, Wyatt Bowles ends up being an NFL offensive lineman, where for one, he was rated as one of the more athletic offensive linemen in the draft. And even over the last 10, 15 years since they have this like athleticism score, and Wyatt Bowles scored pretty well there. And if he ends up being an NFL offensive lineman, like that makes his college career really weird. Because this is a guy who I don't think was a full-time starter until like his 6th year. He might have had, I can't remember if he had 2 seasons or just the 1 season, but like never an all Mountain West guy. Took forever to finally get a start. And he's an NFL dude.
Right.
And it's like, is it development? Is it him being overlooked for 3 or 4 years? Like, if you have an NFL offensive lineman at Utah State, you'd expect them to start for 3 years. Like, Alfred Edwards couldn't even get into the NFL.
No.
He was a 3-year starter at left tackle. And Wyatt Bowles is like, dang, this guy developed well for him to be getting this kind of burn in a preseason game as an offensive lineman and score as well as he did in the draft. Sure, he went undrafted, but undrafted guys sometimes start in week 1. I'm not saying Wyatt Bowles is going to do that, but I don't know. Again, I have to double check if getting that many snaps is a good thing, but if it is, this guy could be seeing a roster spot. I don't know if he'll see a rotation spot, but he could get a roster spot, could carve himself out an NFL role as a guy who didn't start until he was like a 5th-year senior, which is an amazing story. I think it's spectacular.
Yeah, very cool. So he got notable snaps and opportunities. I saw some film of him receiving some high praise, and then certainly Jalen Royals, an article kind of recapping Kansas City's preseason game. They were very high on him and his versatility. Excited to see what he could do, and then as mentioned, Kyrese Rowan, hoping he gets a little better opportunity in the next game. So here's how it plays out. Where the next time you can see some of these guys, Kansas City will face the Seahawks in Seattle on Friday. That'll be on the NFL Network, 8 o'clock kick time, our time. And then if you want to see if Jordan Love takes any snaps on Saturday, the Packers are taking on the Colts in Indianapolis. And then the Rams are hosting the Chargers. They're in the same venue, so it's their home field no matter what. But that's going to be Saturday at 5. And then for the Broncos, they're in the evening on Saturday, 7:30 on NFL Network as they take on the Cardinals. So that's a look at some of the players, former Aggies, trying to make their mark in the NFL in some of their preseason games. So some of them having some opportunity this past weekend, and another slate of games coming up starting Friday and Saturday for these former Aggies. Quick timeouts. We'll be right back with some more thoughts about Utah State and these latest polls that are out. The coaches poll was out earlier. Now the AP poll dropped today. We'll look and compare both coming up next here on the Full Court Press.
The patio is open. The chips are endless. Drinks on tap. You know it's got to be Cafe Sabor, Cache Valley's best Mexican restaurant, gold winner in the Best of Northern Utah contest. Experience Locals Day every Thursday with a huge burrito, endless chips and soda, only $7.95. That's a complete lunch for just $7.95. Finding any lunch under $10 is nearly impossible. Every Thursday, drinks, chips, and massive burrito, just $7.95. The patio, the sun, the fun at Cafe Sabor in the historic train station on 6 Weston Center in Logan.
When grid failures and severe weather cause power outages, your business might take a hit, or at home, you could lose your refrigerated food storage. Generac Standby Power Solutions help ensure an uninterrupted power supply. Generac is the #1 brand of standby generators. Get yours today from Golden Spike Electric, your trusted source for safety and security. Golden Spike Electric, powering your peace of mind. Online at gsegenerators.com or call 257-3016. They also service other models.
No matter what the conditions, DD Auto and Salvage can get your vehicle up and off your property. Now is the time to plan to make extra cash by calling DD Auto and Salvage and moving that old vehicle. Let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it so easy to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. If you have metal, DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204. That's 787-1204 today. See store for details.
Following the local teams, it's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Join us in celebrating the winners in this year's Best of Northern Utah contest. Gold and silver winners revealed earlier this summer. If you're looking for, the best for whatever you may be in the need of for, services, products, different types of businesses were recognized for being the best at what they do in the Best of Northern Utah contest. And you got free magazines all over the area if you want your own guide. But if you want to find those or just see who the winners were, go to bestofnorthernutah.com. So the college football coaches poll came out earlier. And then today, the AP poll dropped, and some similarities, some differences in these polls. Texas, number one in both polls. Penn State, number two in the AP. Ohio State, number two in the coaches. And then you just flip-flop that. Ohio State, number three in the AP. Penn State, number three in the coaches. Then there's a variety of differences as you go, but a couple of Utah State opponents on this list. Texas A&M ranked in the coaches poll at number 21, and Texas A&M in the AP poll, which was released today, coming in at number 19. And Boise State in both polls ranked 25th.
Yeah, a little interesting to see some of the rises and fallers, and then especially looking at this compared to some of the analytics rankings. With SP Plus, with some of these others, even Phil Steele, among others who are more human voting, or human polls. But especially because a lot of people have been high on Penn State, but they're not ranked number one in either poll. Mind you, it was really close with the AP poll; they were dang near.
Yeah, very close.
There's only two fewer first place votes, and there was a 5-point difference. Mind you, in a poll where the top team has 1,500 votes, there was a 5-point difference between first and second.
Yes.
That is a puny gap between those two teams. So it's pretty darn close. But yeah, Texas A&M, they're in the teen, 14, 15 in a lot of these analytics rankings. And in the coaches, and obviously the writers in the AP, they have them down near 20. So human voters, aren't as high on Texas A&M, although the numbers seem to like Texas A&M. So it'll be interesting to watch that. And then Boise State getting the token, okay, you were good last year, we'll keep you in there, basically, which they usually don't keep these Mountain West teams. Usually it's every year. It's just like, when, what's his name, the bracketologist at ESPN, every year.
Oh, Joe Lunardi.
Yeah, Joe Lunardi. He has one Mountain West team coming out into the tournament, and every year he's wrong. I don't know how many times you have to teach him that lesson.
By several factors.
Yeah. But they finally give Boise State a bit of the benefit of the doubt. And then interesting, BYU, Utah, kind of on the edge of the poll in both. More so, especially with the AP, because BYU got in the coaches poll. They were 26th in the AP poll, Utah 27th. Utah is further out of the poll in the coaches poll.
In the coaches poll, UNLV got some recognition. Vanderbilt got some points.
Oh yeah, right at the very edge.
Right at the very edge, and but no Vanderbilt in the AP. UNLV did get some attention in the Associated Press poll, but they are among those receiving votes. So, two teams that are ranked, and at least one that's receiving votes, and
nominally
35th that are also receiving votes. If you include Vanderbilt in that mix.
Yep.
So yeah, interesting look at the preseason poll coming out for the Associated Press today. Coaches poll came out last week, but it's just a bunch of, doesn't really matter anything. There's how many teams finished the season ranked last year who were unranked, like 8 or 9.
Yeah, it was
a similar
bunch
number
of them
who were preseason ranked who finished unranked.
Yeah, a lot. So they're always an exercise in what word should I use? It's just, indulging the bigger programs. It's so much projection. It's trying to predict things that you just can't predict. And I know you can't get rid of the AP poll and the preseason poll just because it has so much history, but like it ends up influencing things later down the line. Like, oh, you have a ranked win. Except that team, maybe finish. Like when Utah State, they on their schedule, it says they faced number 11 Michigan State back in 2018. Michigan State finished with like a 500 record that year. They were either like 6-7 or 7-6.
Yeah, it turned out to be a not very good team.
Yeah, they were not a number 11 team in the country. But the Aggies, they faced the number 11 team in the country, and it's a ranked win. And you look at the end of season, and you say you have this many ranked wins, and there's confusion over are they ranked now? Were they ranked when you played them? Because technically, it's when you played them. That's what's a ranked win. When you played them, were they ranked? And if they were,
in that moment of time,
yeah,
yes.
But that adds confusion to the AP poll and all that. But it's why I like the way they do the college football playoff poll. Is incredibly flawed and biased and kind of a hack job as that is. At least it has the intelligence to wait a few weeks and be like, let's look at this. But even then, they're tainted by, how many, because they're going off,
these preseason polls, these early polls, they matter.
Yeah, that impacts their thinking for that first college football playoff poll, and then they kind of go based off their own thing from there on out. They base it off their rankings. So, but in the end, it is our nature to rank things, so we will continue to do so. we thrive off it here on radio. So as stupid as it is to have preseason rankings, they are inevitable. They are, I would argue, necessary to a degree because this is sports after all. We're not taking this too seriously.
No, 6 different teams received the first place votes in the AP poll. You look at, there's a number of spots that are extremely close. We are talking about Texas and Penn State, very close to each other. Look how close Georgia and Notre Dame, just 6 points separate those two between number 5 and number 6. So, and then also Alabama and LSU, only 5 points separate those two for number 8 and number 9 in the polls. So a lot of close points here, a lot of the polls very close, which just sets up for an exciting start to the football season, which is just a few weeks away. Of
course, what's interesting is there is a dramatic drop from 9 to 10. Because what separates first and 9th is 400 points. And what separates 9 and 10 is 300. It's dang. That's crazy. There's not a lot of confidence once you get beyond number 9 from these AP voters.
No. All right, quick timeout. We'll be right back with interesting other rankings that have come out here recently. We'll discuss that next. Maybe not so good. We'll discuss that next here on the Full Court Press.
While you're making memories this summer on the lake, in the mountains, or around the fire pit, Adams Wealth Advisors is here to help you plan for days to come. Adams Wealth Advisors loves being your trusted neighbor and believes that smart financial planning is the key to a life well lived. Whether you're nearing retirement or just getting started, let Adams Wealth Advisors build a plan that gives you peace of mind today and tomorrow. Google Adams Wealth Advisors for a free consultation today. Local roots, lifelong guidance.
At Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning, Feel the Love is more than just heating and cooling. It means giving back. 5 complete HVAC systems will be donated to a deserving person or family. Feel the love and nominate that person or family in need at mtnvalleyhvac.com. Nominate prior to September 1st, 2025. See website for all details.
Any brand, any size.
My son Ian was diagnosed with a brain tumor at the age of 16 months. the outlook was pretty rough. I mean, it was, we had no hope until St. Jude rescued us. I mean, they saved him. To this date, we are 12 years into this journey, and from day one, we've never once seen a bill. It gave us the peace of mind to know that we're there with our son, and we're gonna beat cancer together. Now, he is doing really, really well. He's alive because of what St. Jude has done. He's here because of the doctors who came before, their blood, their sweat, their tears, the knowledge accumulated and shared, with everyone else around the world. This is how we get rid of this, how we help kids beat cancer all over. It's the future.
Together, we will make yours possible for every child everywhere. Learn more at stjude.org.
Kids today live in a world full of social pressure, bullying, and substance abuse. LEAD has a solution. LEAD connects law enforcement agencies with schools to deliver tested, proven, and effective anti-drugs and violence training to kids. Learn more about LEAD, Law Enforcement Against Drugs and Violence, and our work to create safer, healthier communities at leadrugs.org or on social media at WeAreLead. Sponsored by LEAD, Inc.
The Aggies are #1 here. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press as we wrap things up. We'll excuse Eric for this final segment. He has to dip out. They're taking some family photos or something, so I guess he's prioritizing family over the show. Unforgivable. How could he do this? I thought we were a family. But anyway, for this final segment, got another email from a PR firm always trying to, promote their their sites or whatever research they do. Action Network sent me this. They titled it "The Dirtiest Teams in College Football," and it's just the most penalized teams, trying to paint certain teams as being dirty based on how many penalties they get. And so I thought it was somewhat interesting looking at this and where Utah State is, where some of the other teams in the Mountain West are. So I figured I'd go down the list and look at this where if you look at so we're going to go basically from the best as in least penalized. So in this case, the higher the number is, the better. So it's out of 134 teams over the last 4 years. The data they collected was basically since 2020. So it's 5 seasons, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. And they had a bunch of different categories. It wasn't just raw penalty yardage and all that. They added all these things up and added a bit of a science and analytics, something that I can appreciate. Not just doing raw penalty yardage and different things like that. But for instance, I mentioned out of 134 teams being ranked 134th on this list, I didn't convert it. I would try to convert it backwards to make it better, but I didn't have time to do that number conversion. But Air Force, they actually rank best. They're 134th on this list, so they had the fewest penalties. They're the most disciplined team in college football over the last 5 years, and not too far behind are teams like Wyoming, who's 127th, and then Boise State at 125. So some pretty darn disciplined teams there, and makes a lot of sense. Those, Air Force and Boise State especially have been pretty successful. Wyoming struggling a little bit, but at least they're not hurting themselves with penalties. But then you have some middling teams, UNLV, Air Force, not so much middling. They're like doing okay. It could be better. So UNLV, Fresno State, then Hawaii, they're 55. So you're starting to get into some of the bottom 50 teams as far as penalty yardage. San Diego State at 47. And now we're getting to some teams that are getting penalized a lot. San Jose, 36th worst, if you want to call it that. Colorado State, 26th. And then you have the 3 teams in the Mountain West that are not only, most in the Mountain West as far as penalties, they're among the worst in the country at having lots of penalties called on them. Nevada, 13th worst in the country over the last 5 years in penalties, self-inflicted wounds. And then you get Utah State, 6th worst in that time span. I know that was something that happened all the time with Blake Anderson. He, battled those demons with his team the entire time he was here. Even in 2021, they win the championship. They did that despite having so many penalties. And then if you're keeping track of which names in the Mountain West I've listed off, New Mexico, even worse than Utah State in that span. And in fact, New Mexico, the most penalized team in the entire nation over the last 5 years. And I don't know if that bodes well for Utah State, like trying to cut down on penalties, because Bronco Mendenhall went into New Mexico trying to turn that program around. And last year, I think New Mexico, I looked up earlier today, I think they were 131st in penalties. They were still bottom of the barrel, even with Bronco Mendenhall. And I think it speaks more to the narrative that I've been trying to drum up a little bit, where I think a lot of people are expecting a year one overhaul with Bronco Mendenhall. Saying, all right, he's going to clean things up, and year one is going to be so drastically different from years before. And I'm not sold that that's going to be the case. Do I think he can turn this team around eventually? Certainly. But yeah, he went to New Mexico, and sure, he did some things that hadn't been done in a minute. The 5-win season was the most since like 2013, or I think it was 2016, where they went I think they had a 8 or 9 win season in 2016. He had the most wins since that year. Beat Utah State. That was something that hadn't been done in a minute, I don't think. I think the last time New Mexico had beaten the Aggies was 2016. Beat a ranked team for the first time in forever. It was like the early 2000s. Was the last time, maybe even late 90s, the last time that New Mexico had beaten a ranked opponent. But there were a lot of things that stuck around. They didn't make a bowl game. And as confident as Bronco is, this team's going to make a bowl game. Something I've pointed out repeatedly is that his first year at BYU, they barely snuck into a bowl game. His first year at Virginia, they went 2-10. His first year in New Mexico, they still didn't go to a bowl game. They were close. 8-point loss to Hawaii. That's the only thing that kept them from a bowl game, is if they beat Hawaii, but still didn't manage to do it. So year one of Bronco Mendenhall isn't going to be this magical turnaround, I don't think, based on the precedent. But it can still be a foundation-laying season. I think the New Mexico season was a foundation-laying season. His first year at BYU laid a foundation for obviously some great success. At Virginia, went 2-10, but years down the line, he was going to the Orange Bowl. So that was actually one of the things that I ended up taking away most from this, looking at most penalized teams. I realized New Mexico was terrible at penalties. Bronco comes in, doesn't fix it right away. But when you look back at his teams with Virginia, they were ranked in the 60s in penalty yardage. I didn't go all the way back to BYU, but, they weren't a super penalized team when he was at Virginia. They weren't one of the best in the country, but they were, it's a number that you're not going to be worried about. If your team ranks in the 60s in penalty yardage, it's not elite, but you're not spending every single week worrying about how many penalty yards you're going to have to overcome, how many series you're going to have killed because you had a holding penalty on 1st and 10, or, a personal foul on defense extends a drive for the other team. I think in a year or two, you're going to have a Utah State team that'll be far more disciplined than it has been the last few years. A couple of texts on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line before we close out the show. 7854 saying Bulls play all the snaps in the same position. They might have moved him around just to see how he could do. They all came on the interior offensive line. He's very much billed as an interior offensive lineman. That's what he was at the Aggies. I think he played left guard last season. I don't know if they moved him between left and right guard, but he'll play guard in the NFL. He's not going to play tackle. I doubt he plays center. Maybe it's possible. And then 9-3-1-5 says, Eric sounds like he's trying to be Ajay's twin with leaving early. Yeah, we did have that. But anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Make sure to tune in tomorrow.
The home for Skyview Sports. Sports Talk Radio. KLGN Logan. 106.9 FM. 1390 AM. The